So welcome to Getting Started with Azure Infrastructure as Code, Part 2, and in this episode we'll look at ARM template deployment using VS Code. So we'll start looking at each part of the tool set, so all the applications that we installed previously, and then we'll take a look at some script files themselves and look at a blank template, and we'll also look at things like parameters, variables and outputs that make up the structure of an ARM template. We'll also look at some functions on how we build up names and variables, and conditions is another one of those functions that we'll look at as well. So if we look at the tool set here, we can see on the top left, we're using Azure DevOps here, and that when we create a project, it gives us a repo. So that's where we store all our files, and the type of repo is a Git repo, and that's where we install that Git for Windows tool. And on the right hand side, we can see Visual Studio Code, and that is our editor that we can use as infrastructure people or even developers. And then from that Visual Studio Code, we can deploy straight to the Azure Resource Manager platform. And also, if we note on the left hand side, we can, as part of Azure DevOps, we have something called pipelines, so we can deploy directly from there as well. So we use that for automated deployments too. So we'll look at how do we deploy from both of those environments, both manually using code and also using the pipelines option as well, by selecting the credentials we're going to use and where we're going to deploy our resources and what type of resources we will deploy. So we look at the definition of a resource manager template and all the properties that we need to specify for the different types of resources. How do we develop those things? So we can use a number of methods. A good place to start is the template gallery, using the link there. Or we can also build objects potentially from the portal and export there and export from there. So we can get the structure of the file and many of the properties that way as well. And we can start using that as a starting point as well. We can also use snippets, which is one of the extensions that we installed in the previous part. And then we'll look at some of the functions there. And then we deploy using the PowerShell modules. Okay, so we'll look at the template gallery first. So if we go to Quick Start Templates, we can select any of the examples that we can find in here. So we just scroll down and find something that we can build. Could be anything. So maybe a site-to-site VPN tunnel. If we click on that, just as an example, we should see a deploy file and a parameter file as well. So the deploy file is the one that's got the definition of what we're trying to build, which in this case is a site-to-site tunnel. So if we just click on that, and we can see all the parameters and properties of the file, we can use that, and they're usually a good up-to-date status of the files in this gallery as well, usually. Another way, we can go to the portal, so we could build an object using the portal to start with if we don't have a template for it, and that will usually give us all the latest properties and structure for that resource. So in this case, if we click on the key vault and then just go down here to export template, and that will also give us a good template. It's a good starting point. We get all the API versions, we can get the structure, all the properties for that specific type of resource, and then we can use it and modify it as we need to. So we'll go to Visual Studio Code and create a blank one. So if we create a new file in our project, so let's keep it outside of our SQL one for now. Create a new file and we'll call that blank demo, and make sure we call it .json. And then we can use the this Azure Resource Manager snippet that we had. That's what gives us this functionality. So if I just do ARM and exclamation mark, we can just select the first one here. That will give us the latest blank template. So we can see the latest schema is 2019-0401. We can use our own versioning for the template, and we've got all these various options here, so we don't always need to use all of them, but we'll look at them in a second as well. So if we start again using this specific tool, the snippet tool, so the parameters are things that we pass into it. Functions I've not used yet. Variables are variables that we can create as we build this, and that could be taking a parameter and doing something with it. A resource is what we actually building, so that could be a storage account or anything, and the outputs are any outputs we want to send outside of the template once we're done. So if we look at resources, and again using the snippet tool, we can just type arm hyphen and then look at what we want to build. So we can just type, if I type log, I'll see log analytics workspace, for example. So if I want to build a log analytics workspace, that's all I need to do is do that, and we'll get a basic structure of it. Now this is not always up to date, so the best thing to do is deploy it or look at an existing one just to check the API versions. There's also a web link as well to find the latest version of the APIs, and we can see the free one in here is a legacy setting. So I do know that the updated one is per gigabyte, and that was brought in about then. So, but I'll just show you this as an example. So a resource is made up of a name. In this case, it's hard-coded that name in for us, but we can change it. The type, a workspace, API version, the location it needs to know. So in this case, it's using a function called resource group dot location to say, okay, deploy this resource in the same resource group that we are running this template in. One of the properties it's got is the pricing model, and then we can basically deploy this as we need to. But what we may want to do is create a parameter and pass in a name for it, or a variable even. So let's do that. So if I go to here, and again, if I use the arm snippet tool, hyphen, if I just type param, I can do parameter, tab that, and I can then call that, I don't know, let's call it prefix. And you'll see why in a moment. So we'll call that prefix, and we'll call that prefix for resource name here. Okay, and then instead of hard coding this name in here, what we'll do is we'll use something called a, we'll use that parameter for now. So just call that, if I just put a square bracket and start typing parameter, and now I can see do a tab, and it'll come up with parameters. And then if I do open brackets, it'll see all the parameters I've got defined, and I can see that's called prefix. So let's just use that for now. Okay. What we can also do is add some variables, and we'll do that as we go along. So let's just start with that parameter. Now, in order to use that parameter, I need to pass that in when I run this script, or have a parameter file. So what we'll do is, if I go to my, let's just save that first, and right click, if I right click on this, I'll be able to get the path of that file. So let's just go to one of my deployment PowerShell scripts. So this one, basically what it is, first we log into the platform, log into the subscription, tell it which resource group we're going to deploy to, and then tell it which parameter file we're going to use, and then run the deployment. So what we can do, I've started one off here. So if this blank deployment here, so let's just do that. Okay, blank demo. We're not going to use a parameter file in this one. So then what we do is we just get a date and time stamp just for the name of the deployment, and then we need to do new AZ resource group deployment. The name of that deployment is deploy, and the timestamp, which template file we're going to use, and which resource group we're going to drop it into. Okay, so if we've not run this before, you first need to, you could just highlight these section here, press this button here, and that'll just give you a login box and save these variables. So let's just, I'm already logged in, so I'm just going to do that. And then go to our blank deployment demo here, and let's try and run that, and let's see what happens. See, it's asking me for the prefix because we don't have a parameter file, for example. So I'm just going to call that, I'm just going to put some random text in there. And then press enter, and it will go away and try and deploy what I've asked it to deploy. So you can see that running there. Now what I can do also, if I go back to my resource group, because we're deploying to this resource group, we'll be able to look into deployments and see what's been going on. Now I've got loads of test ones and all kinds of stuff going on in here, but the latest one I can see, if because I put my timestamp on, I can see exactly what when this one was run, and I can see it's actually deploying right now. If I drill into that, I'll be able to see what inputs we passed into this deployment. and there's my prefix that I passed into it. Okay, so we should let that finish, and hopefully that should succeed. Cool. So let's click on the resource group there, and there's my log analytics workspace. Awesome. So now that's very basic. What we could do is, and how do we modify that now to go a bit further? So if we look at that resource, look at the pricing tier, for example, I can see, yep, this one's ticked because I changed it to the per gigabyte model. And we have daily cap here to limit how much data ingestion we do per day. This is not switched on by default. And then also our data retention in this case. So these again are just different properties of a resource. So what we can do, so the default we can see is 30 there. 60. Sorry, let's try changing that to 60. Okay, so we can see that's changed to 60. Let's look at our daily cap. Let's put a daily cap on. Let's put a cap on at 5 gigabytes, for example. All right, so we made a couple of changes there. Now what we can do export template, for example, just to look at the structure and get an updated version. So we can see here, look, we've got an updated API version. So one of the things we could do is, let's just update that to start with. So we go back to our template. Let's update that because the snippet is old. And then let's look at some of these options here. So we can see after the SKU of the per gigabyte model here, pricing model, we've got retention, we've got workspace capping at 5 gig. So let's copy this, for example. And so we've got to be really careful on where we put these things. So we can see there's a comma after per gig, and we can specify it inside there. Okay, and we shouldn't put that last comma on. No, we should, sorry. Because you can see when the colours will change. So let's save that. Now we may want to use variables as well. So we may not want to hard code these numbers. Okay, so what we can do is specify a variable. Okay, so the way we do that is to first give our variable a name. So let's call that. Sorry, just click on there. We need to put it in quotes and give it a name, quote GB, something like that. We need to give it a colon, and depending on the data type it is, in this case we'll just use an integer, a number, and then we'll put a comma for the next one, and we'll call that daily retention. And again, colon, and let's call that, we had 60 before, right? So let's try and just change that to 50. And then we don't have a comma on the last one. Okay, so now these we've set up 2 variables, so we could use those further down in here now. So if I just do a bracket, a square bracket, sorry, and then start typing, hold on, you need quotes, variables, type variables, and then open the bracket, and I can see my 2 variables that I've set up here. So this one's my retention one, so I'll click on that. And the quota, the same for that. Variables, so, and then just for this one, daily quota, click on that. So we can see we're now going to change these to 5 and 50 there. So if I just save that, and if we just find my blank template deployment again, and just run it again, let's just run it again. Oh no, not deleted the other one, so I'm just going to put another random thing in there for now. If we go to here, so this is going to give us another workspace with the values that we've just specified. So what we can do is let's get rid of this one. Just go delete and put in the name that we put in. Okay, so hopefully that one's been created if it liked the name. Yeah, cool. So it's got that name in it there. And then if we just take a quick look at the retention period pricing, we should see that it's down to 50 and this was 5, I think. Yeah, 5. So what we can do in this case, let's make some changes to that. save that. And then what we could also do is we go back to the template. Let's change these numbers to 10, 45. What we can also do, if we save that, we can run a what if command. Okay. It's going to go and check what are the changes it would make, so without actually running it in this case. That can take a few seconds. So, oops, I pressed something else. So we can see it's going to make a change here. So the deployment will update the following. So there's my subscription, the resource group. This is the resource, and it's going to make a change to these properties here. So we can use that what if statement as well to see what we're going to change just before we run it as well. It's also worth noting that when you run these deployments, it's doing an incremental run. So if we look up here, so this is the last run. We'll see the mode is incremental. So that means it will only make changes to your resource group. It won't overwrite anything. If we did want to overwrite anything, we can use a different mode, just -mode, and the other option is complete. And that will completely wipe the resource group and just put in the specific items and resources that you want. So got to be really careful with that, but luckily the default is incremental. Okay, so what else can we do with that? We can use certain functions, for example. So let's build up our name and let's create a parameter file this time, so I don't have to always type it in. So another great thing about this snippet tool and the Azure ARM tools that we installed earlier, so I could just right click on this now and do select create parameter file. And what do I want to do? I want to create a new parameter file, and I want all the parameters that I've got in this template. So let's just call that, and it's already given me a name, sorry, blank demo.parameters, which is the usual format that we use. All right, so it's got our parameter file there. It's created that for us. Now we need to provide the value in there. So we can now put a value. So let's just do log in this case. We're going to use that as a prefix. Okay, save that. And then go back to here. And now it's going to use that prefix from the file. So I don't have to type it in every time. So that's one thing we can do. Now what we want to do, we don't want to just call it log. So what we should do is set some variables up to build the name up. So we could have other parameters. For example, what you generally have is something like a region code or environment code or something. So if I just do that, and again using the param value, yeah, so it's the value, not a parameter in a resource template. So the value for our region code could be UKS for UK South, for example. So let's just save that. Now, if we look up here, it's already linked it, and it's given us a little warning here. Okay, we've got a new, so it's linked the file, the template file and the JSON file together, and it's telling us, okay, you've got a parameter called region code, but there's no mention of it in your template. So what we need to do is create that. So look, if we highlight these, you'll see the brackets there. So if I want to add a new one, I can just go like that. Add a new one, and then again using the I keep doing that ARM param there. Okay, so we know the name of our thing is called region code, and you can see it's already picked it up as well because they're linked together. It's pretty clever. Region code. Okay, and then what we can do is we can start building up names for our resource, for example. So now we could call this log analytics name. Put that in there. Now we'll start building up a name of our resource. Well, I forgot something. First, what we should do is add a suffix. Okay, so a suffix is something that we'll put on the end of it, and some items need to be globally unique. So if you create a storage account, even a log analytics account, SQL Server, for example, it needs to be unique within the Azure platform, so you can't reuse one that somebody's already used. So the way we do that is to use kind of a unique ID. So we can do that by creating a hash of a resource group, for example. So we'll take the characters from the resource group, jumble them all together, and get some kind of code from that. So what I've already got one here. I'll just paste it in. I'll just paste this one in so you can see it, and I'll put it in the notes. So let's create a suffix here. And what this is going to do is, so if we just look at this middle bit here, what that's going to do is going to get the resource ID, resource group ID, sorry, and the location, and then take the and create a unique string out of those, and then just give us 5 characters. So by default, you'll get 13 characters using this unique string function. So that's one of the functions there, and we've got another function here, substring, to say, okay, start from character 0 and just go up to the next 5 characters. Okay, so then what we can do is use another function called concat. Okay, so that's a really common one as well. So we can see that there. Tab that or click on that. And what do we want to concatenate? We want to concatenate our prefix. So we'll go to parameters, open that, and we're going to use a prefix there. That's the first thing we're going to do. Then we'll do a comma to do our next one. And let's put a hyphen in there. And then our next one would be our parameters again. So in quotes, parameters, analytics. That should work. It's not the IntelliSense, doesn't come up. And let's put another hyphen and then use a variable this time. Sorry, the problem is I don't need a bracket on this one. So that one will be variables, and which variable do we want? A suffix. I want to put the suffix on the end of it. Okay, so that's given us our log analytics name. So we're just going to make that name. We're going to get a prefix, put some hyphens in the middle, put a region code in, and use this first 5 characters of this unique code that we've got. Okay, and again, this is highlighted, so well, you've created this variable, but you're not using it anyway. So in this time, the name of the object is going to be, instead of a parameter, we're going to use a variable. So if I just change that to variable, go into this box, just put another hyphen, apostrophe, it's going to say which of the variables do you want to use. So I'm going to use log analytics name. And if I do that, it's going to build that name up for us, use the parameter files, and then build it. So if I go back to my PowerShell here, now we need to add our parameter file location. So copy path, blank deployment, let's use this. Okay, so that's the location of the parameter file. Now we need to add the parameter file link there. So we can use this variable here. Okay, and we should save all that and run it again. Hopefully that will run. Meanwhile, we can get rid of any of the old ones. Let's get rid of that. Oh, I could have actually done that by code as well, forgot to mention. But let's just leave it there for now. Cool, there, let's create it. No, sorry, that's the old one, it's still there. And there's our new one. So it's created a little bit of a code there for us, and just put our log UKS and a suffix on the end of it. So again, if we look into that, we'll see our specific settings inside there. Data retention 45, daily cap. So these are, you can see they're not default values, so we can customize it. So you can pretty much do that for many of the options that you've got for each resource. So hopefully that helped just to understand how we can start using this environment to start building things from scratch. So we've looked at creating a JSON file from scratch We looked at some of the functions that we've got. We've got some. We looked at things like parameters, variables. How do we build those up? How do we create the parameter file, and then how do we input them into there and creating our own variables? And a good thing to show, and I'll put a link for this as well, is the template functions as well. So we can there's a help site here for the functions, and you can see all the different types of things that we can do on the different data types as well. So we looked at not numeric. We looked at some of the string functions here. So if you remember, we looked at unique string, substring, and those kind of functions there. So there's many other ones that we can use, and just to show you that's there. So we've got a substring there, unique, concat was the other one as well, so that should be there as well. So concat, so that's how we concatenate and build things up, build a string up together made up of different objects. So thanks for watching that section. In the next one, we'll look at how do we handle securing our passwords inside our code using Key Vault. So see you there.